Welcome back to the Story Lab. Today, we will look at a video game adaptation. There have been a couple of movies that were based on video games over the years, from Jumanji to Angry Birds to Pixels, which combined multiple games. Today, we want to add one more to that list, a movie based on the game Worms. A Worms movie? If you have ever played Worms, you know that it is about creatively killing your worm opponent. Specifically, we could identify the following points as the themes or recognizable aspects of Worms. Little worms in only slightly different outfits, fighting endlessly. Fighting arenas on islands full of obstacles and mines. Any weapon from bazooka to banana bomb. Support items like drill, ninja rope, etc. Aerial attacks and aerial support pack drops. Giant overpowered weapons like earthquake, a giant stone donkey, or a literal Armageddon button. Rising water and sudden death. Worms explode when they die. Funny voice lines, reacting to enemy, and friendly fire attacks. So how do we turn this into a movie? We have come up with the following ingredients that should give us a good story. A story about worms at war, but family-friendly with a moral message. A story full of weapons but also showing the consequences of using them. As many of the features from our analysis as possible. An open beginning, i.e. we never learn why the worms are fighting. An open end, i.e. the end of the movie is not the end of the war. Let's see what the lab makes of that. Put it all in and send it over to the analysis. The story has been completed. Let's have a look at it. The Worms movie. The world of Worms is a world of constant war. Hundreds of factions are fighting on hundreds of little islands, with one explosion bigger than the other. Amid the chaos, we focus in on one particular worm that is recognizable thanks to a special piece of his outfit, a baseball cap or something. This worm is clearly a great hero, gunning his enemies down one by one, making impossible backflips, before reaching a medpack just in time to turn on his dumb-witted pursuers and then waking up from the dream. And thus, we get to know our protagonist. Let's call him Willy, for real. He is a boy, not yet old enough to be a soldier in the endless wars. He dreams of one day becoming a great warrior like his father, who died in the war against a particularly nasty enemy force, the Blues. Willy and his clan are part of the Reds. After getting to know Willy for a bit and learning that the world full of war is very much reality, we see Willy go to the conscription office to sign up for a position in the fighting force of the Reds. The officer only laughs at the little worm but is finally convinced by Willy's strength of will. Thus, he does sign Willy on for a job in the army. In the Army Supply Corps. At first, we see that Willy is a bit disappointed, but quickly he gets excited for his new position. It is a cool job, where he gets to pack weapons and med kits for the soldiers, that are then dropped from planes flying over the battlefields. Willy is particularly excited about that part, especially when he hears from an older worm that flying would be part of his training. In addition to supplying the fighting troops, Willy and the other support worms also develop and test new weapons, for example a jetpack from where dynamite can be dropped or a driller bomb that can be dropped from a plane. The mastermind behind such inventions is Professor W. The old professor takes a liking in Willy and the two become good friends. Willy is very impressed by the things that W has invented over his long service. Among other things, the professor had come up with the first plane, a giant magnet that can attract grenades, and just recently a button that can cause an earthquake. Curiously, whenever Willy asks about any of these inventions, W, who otherwise likes to talk, becomes quiet and quickly turns the conversation around. But before Willy can think about what that means, he gets distracted by the flying lesson starting. Soon he is a star pilot, developing acrobatic skills and trying to get the attention of the general that keeps hanging around the supply cruise station. Finally, the general does take notice and assigns Willy to some more dangerous missions, flying right over the front lines of the Reds and the Blues and making precarious supply drops right there. When Willy returns from the front lines, the general asks what Willy had seen. Willy describes that the Reds are mostly surrounded but have never given up, and that the dying worms even sacrificed themselves to take out more of the Blues. The General nods and then sends Willy back to the base. Only the audience gets to see what happens next. The General pulls out a little button device and activates an earthquake that destroys some of the Blues and all of the remaining Reds on the island. Meanwhile, Willy returns to the supply base. For the first time in a while he has no obligations, so he goes to see Professor W. To his surprise, he finds the professor in the middle of a personal crisis. He had just finished his newest invention, a button that allows to attract boulders and other large stones. Willy doesn't understand the problem. That could be a powerful weapon in the hands of the Reds. When Willy says as much, the professor finally snaps. Shouting and crying, the old worm explains that he had never intended to develop greater and greater weapons, but that the military had always misused his inventions. He had come up with the plane for dropping medkits at the front lines, constructed the magnets to attract supplies, developed the driller to save trapped worms, not to use on the head of enemies. He had come up with various items with the desperate goal of helping the worms to survive these horrible wars. Instead, all these things were now utilized as weapons, even the support items. And now, trying to make yet another helping device, to remove large obstacles, W had essentially developed an Armageddon button. Having never thought about any of this, Willy is quite stunned but is already convinced that the professor is right and they should be helping the warriors escape, rather than fight. And Willy agrees that they cannot allow the new invention to be used as a doomsday weapon. Unfortunately, others in the team do not agree. Suddenly, one of Willy's early mentors shows up in the door with a rifle in his hands. It turns out that he is working for the General and will not allow the Armageddon button to be destroyed. Another group of warriors is trapped on a sinking island, the traitor explains, and since they are lost anyways, the Armageddon button would be used to wipe out all the worms the Blues had sent to take them out. Professor W tries to destroy the button before the traitor can get it, but the other worm shoots his weapon. It is the first time Willy actually sees a weapon fired from up close, in a non-testing environment. It is a dramatic scene. Having had only a few lives, the shot is very much fatal for the old professor. He dies in Willy's hands, while the traitor runs off with the Armageddon button. The professor's dying words are directed to Willy, help them. And Willy takes that to heart. He decides to go and save those trapped red worms. And to his surprise, nearly the entire rest of the support crew is with him. There is one problem though, the crew has very little weapons left, having made all their drops for the day already. All they have is a bit of dynamite, a few guns and the rifle that the traitor had left behind. But Willy disagrees. They have much more, he reminds them, namely all of the support kits, that they hadn't been asked to drop since quite a while. They had thus an ample supply of ninja rope, torches, etc. The worms take everything with them and start the mission. Willy flies them to the battlefield. However, the worms arrive too late. The General, save in his bunker, has already received the Armageddon button and hasn't hesitated a single moment to use it. Meteors start descending towards the island, while the Willy and the others are still approaching. The plane gets hit and crash lands on the island, but the worms make it out all right, having lost only a couple of their lives. Quickly, our heroes find the warriors. But this is only the beginning of the struggle. Now stranded on the battered and sinking island, that had nearly been completely destroyed by the Armageddon attack, there was only one chance for escape left: make their way to the edge of the island, evading all of the surviving Blues. It becomes a long hard fight, but the heroes make very clever use of their limited supplies, swinging themselves over the abysses with the ninja ropes, digging tunnels, using their tools to trick enemies into walking into the few dynamites they have, and taking out an enemy with the 2 shots left in the rifle, and simply pushing the very last one over the edge of a cliff. In the end, they all make it out. The movie ends with the survivors arriving at the bunker of the General and exposing his actions and the murder of Professor W to the other worms. The General and the traitor are arrested. The captain of the team, that Willy and the others rescued, becomes the new General. He offers Willy a position among the warriors, but Willy declines. He says that he would continue his mentor's mission and help all of them, by working towards saving everyone, and maybe even ending the war. And with that goal in mind, he and the support crew we have come to know and love walk away. And that would be the end of the Worms movie. What did you think of it? Let's quickly summarize the story. Willy the Worm wants to become a warrior, but he is too young and so assigned to the Supply Corps. Working there, he learns that the leaders of the military misuse the inventions of the genius weapons developer Professor W. The professor never wanted to make weapons but tools to help the worms survive. When a traitor kills the professor and steals his newest invention to be used as a doomsday weapon, Willy and the rest of the support crew take matters into their own hands, head to the front lines and save the friendly worms trapped there with minimal weapons. Then, they decide to continue this work, and to help as many worms as they can. Please note that everything presented here is simply the results of an experiment. No part of this presentation is intended as a correction of an existing story or claims to be the real story. The selection or omission of any parts of the source material is not to be understood as commentary, positive or negative, on the original productions. These are simply thoughts and experiments based on existing material, and none of it could be created without the work of all those involved in creating the original works. As with any scientific result, you may utilize any of the story ideas that resulted from these experiments for your own experiments or production, while citing this experiment as its source. It is now closing time for our lab. Goodbye until next time.